Good morning, or perhaps even afternoon to some of you, and welcome to today's webinar where we're going to be discussing how to market your hotel to business travelers and incorporate the notion that visual storytelling is the combination of both art and science. My name is Darlene Rondeau, and I will be your host and moderator for today's event. I am the Vice President Best Practices for VFM Leonardo's online merchandising group. A couple of housekeeping items before we begin. First, we're going to be recording today's webinar, and at the conclusion of our session today, we're going to be sending you a thank you for joining us email with a link to that recording, which you can listen to again at your leisure or share with others. And then we'll also have questions and answers that we'll be taking throughout our session. Some of you have already found it. There's a questions dialog box in your GoToMeeting panel. And so as we move through our discussion today, please feel free to send in your questions, and we'll be addressing the questions as they come in as well as at the end of today's presentation. We're also going to be tweeting during today's webinar, so please feel free to join in the conversation at hashtag VFMLWebinar. You can also follow us at VFM Leonardo for regular updates on the latest trends in hotel marketing. So what we're going to cover today is the impact of visual storytelling on a business traveler's hotel decision. We're going to look at how business travelers research and book their hotel, and then we'll also be discussing the overlap between leisure and business travel shopping. Before we get started with the formal part of our webinar today, I believe it's important to briefly review the definition of travel and expense management solutions. Essentially, this booking software, which is purchased by a corporation for use by its employees for business travel, helps companies keep control of their travel expenses by minimizing out-of-policy travel while maximizing their corporately negotiated rates, all the while adapting to individual preferences. Additionally, there are providers of corporate booking solutions, which also include expense management modules that directly feed expense reports for quick and accurate account of travel costs. I'm pleased to have with me today two experts on the subject of corporate travel. First, I'd like to introduce Joff Romoff, representing Concur Technologies. Concur is the largest provider of corporate booking tool solutions in the industry today, and Joff has more than 20 years of experience in the travel industry and is currently the head of global lodging supplier management at Concur. Prior to joining this company in 2010, Joff held positions as Vice President of Sales at Amadeus and Vice President of Market Management Americas at Expedia. He's also held positions at Air Miles, Air Canada, and American Airlines. Joff has a degree in Strategic Business Management from the Rotman School of Management. Also with me today is David Attardi. As Vice President of Interactive Marketing, David Attardi leads the BF Saul Company's Hospitality Group's strategic on- and offline marketing initiatives. Simply put, the interactive marketing team's job at BF Saul is to ensure that people are finding, booking, and talking about BF Saul across all channels, on and offline. In addition to being the senior executive of the company's $35 million e-commerce initiative, David is also actively engaged in several leadership positions within the hospitality industry, including founder and chair of the IHG Owners Association Emerging Leaders Council and a board member for the Washington, D.C. chapter of HSMAI. David holds a double bachelor's degree from Virginia Tech and an MBA from the University of Kansas International Business Program in Northern Italy, the Consortium Institute of Management and Business Analysis. So before we continue with our presentation, I'd like to do a poll of the audience, and you'll see on your screen that we're going to be asking three different polls. And the first poll that we want to talk to you about here is what is your biggest challenge relative to um, business travel, attracting business travelers? And so let me just get that poll up here for you. Well, sorry folks, we're having a little bit of a glitch with this particular poll, and so let's just move on, and at this point I'm going to reintroduce Joff, who is going to talk to us about Concur's perspective on business travel. Joff, over to you.
Thanks, Darlene, and hello everybody. Thanks very much for taking the time to join our webinar today. What I thought I would do is, before we get into some additional information, just give you an overview of who Concur is and some top-line facts. I understand there's upwards of 800 people on the call today, so I suspect not everybody is familiar with our company. Darlene, can I get the slide up, please?
Yes, we're just having a little bit of a go-to-meeting issue. Let me just try something else here, Joff.
Okay. While you're doing that, I'll just give you a verbal overview of what the slide effectively will say. Concur was started about 20 years ago, fundamentally as a expense management. There we go. Thank you. As an expense management solution, and about 4 or 5 years ago, Concur acquired a company by the name of Attardi in the Washington, which really changed the depth and the breadth of the offering with the fully integrated expense management and travel opportunities. So we've seen some substantial growth in the last 7 or 8 years because of this, and as you can see now, we're hosting more than 20,000 clients. We have over 20 million users, and we're used in over 100 countries. You'll also notice to the right that we continue to be the industry leader in corporate expense management and travel, and our growth is quite large throughout both North America and in various other parts of the world. We're dominant in Europe as well as in Australia, and we're seeing some very strong growth with Concur in Japan and India. Next bullet point, please, Dylan.
Yep.
Thank you. As I mentioned, we operate here in North America predominantly, and we've got about half of the Fortune 500 as clients. So the reason that statistic is relevant is just the sheer fact of the data insights that we've got on the corporate travel market. Next bullet, please.
Excuse me, Joff, we're getting some feedback from the audience. Can you speak a little louder, please?
Sure, of course, no problem. Let me know if this is better. Concur purchased TripIt about 2.5 years ago. TripIt is the leading online itinerary aggregator in the industry. It's fully integrated into Concur Travel. When we purchased it, TripIt had just over 2 million users. We're now up to over 7.1 million users. One of the neat things about TripIt, again, in terms of messaging the corporate travel community, is the fact that we are able to really understand what their habits are to travel via the itineraries that we're seeing. TripIt gets approximately 100,000 itineraries a day, and these itineraries generally are air-related. About 60% of them are hotel-related, which really proves to be a great opportunity in that the difference between the two is a fantastic way to market to your customer. And we've worked with the likes of Best Western to do that, and we continue to do so. So TripIt was a pretty neat acquisition that we made and integrated quite nicely. One of the things that's coming out clear every year is just the sheer number of customers that are booking travel online. We're seeing somewhere within our group between the 67, 68%, hovering on 70% of corporations using online travel versus directly working with a travel agent. We find that those who do work directly with the travel agency community is usually on a little bit more complex itineraries where The transactional itineraries with 1 or 2 components are usually done online. And then lastly, you'll notice the bullet, we were fortunate enough to win the U.S. government travel bid a couple of months ago. So Concur will now be the exclusive provider of travel and expense solutions to the U.S. government. We're incredibly proud of that achievement. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Joff. Excellent, and congratulations on winning that bid. That was tremendous. We have, to the audience, we fixed the issue with the poll. So I'm going to, if you don't mind, Joff, just launch that poll right now so we can get a handle on what's on the minds of everyone in terms of what's the biggest challenge with business travel. And so, everyone, I've launched the poll. If you can just click your answer, and once all the attendees have finished voting, I will read the answers so that we can get a handle on what's keeping everybody up at night relative to business travelers. So thanks, Joff, for letting me jump in here. We have almost 70% of the folks have voted. The answers are how to reach them and then getting them to consider or choose my hotel. And then the third selection is both. And it looks like the majority of people have weighed in, and by and large, the folks are saying they're concerned about both. How do I reach business travelers? And then once I reach them, how do I get them to consider and choose my hotel? So thanks, everybody, for allowing us to poll you there. So, Joff, here's your next slide.
Great, thanks so much. And actually, that sort of lends quite nicely to some of the things that that we're looking at as well. You know, it goes without saying that corporate travel bookings have grown significantly. They're expected to rise. We're seeing dramatic increases at Concur. I was looking at statistics a little while ago, and we're you know, between 15 and 20% year over year on transactions that we're seeing, especially in the lodging space. So we're starting to see, obviously, a great deal of movement over towards the online tool. What's kind of interesting also is we've gotten some statistics on leakage. In other words, on the managed corporate travel side, we're seeing somewhere between 35 and 40% leakage at times with certain clients outside of the tool. So in terms of reach to that particular customer, there are several methods of doing that, I think, is probably the point that I'm trying to make. And I think that's driven largely by the increase in mobile. Concur does have the ability to book travel product, I should say, on mobile and tablet devices. And as a result of that, we're seeing a lot more use of multiple sources of booking. And in terms of reaching those customers, that's quite important. Next slide.
Joff, we're still getting feedback from the audience that they're having trouble hearing you. So maybe if you could stick closer to your computer mic.
Yep. Okay. Hopefully this is a little bit better. The next slide I just want to share with you is just a stat that we took from Focusrite. I think a lot of people may have seen this. Hopefully everybody can hear me. 56% of corporate travel dollars will be spent online in 2013. What that clearly is saying to us is that the ability to message and market and provide relevant information to that traveler is more important than ever. We have an interesting saying that we've kind of socialized within Concur, and I know that everybody talks about big data. We talk about my data in the sense of the ability to provide relevant and insightful information that is about me to that customer based on my habits. And we're seeing more and more of that take place within the market, whether it's its ability to drive additional product offers that are relevant to that customer, the ability to incent that customer using loyalty currency, the ability to provide that customer with additional opportunities to engage within various brands. And it's really being centralized on the individual traveler. So I think that number will obviously increase based on the adoption that we're seeing. But again, the theme of my data is something that we're seeing coming out quite a bit. Next slide, please.
There you go.
Thank you. Within that, we're also seeing a pretty interesting change as it pertains to the corporate travel market. You know, there's two ways that Concur's looked at it. We see it going from more of a command and control type of environment to an enable and monitor. And, you know, when we say enable and monitor, it's really a function of the ability to provide my travelers the products and services that they want, and their ability to book those or consume those products and services in the way that they want. We're seeing this come out largely, obviously, from some of the new gen companies in Silicon Valley. I think a lot of people are very familiar with the sort of non-traditional corporate travel policy that the likes of Google have. And we're starting to see that take shape in a lot of technology companies and non-technology companies. I think it's driven by a couple of things. Number one is, if we kind of look at some top-line labor force statistics, in 2010, about 35% of the labor force will be quoted to millennials. In 2015, that is going to move up to 51%. And as a result of that, obviously, there is going to be some drastic change in the way that we interact with those customer groups. We're starting to see the enable and monitor philosophy come out on a number of fronts, not only in travel. I mean, one of the examples that I cited, I know that it wasn't that long ago where we were relegated to have certain types of cell phones, and now in most organizations, it really is just a function of whatever device the employee would like to use, the company supports that. I think that's an interesting parallel in what we're seeing within the travel space, in the sense that the corporate traveler does want a variety of offers in terms of product, and the corporation is trying to offer that in the most compelling way that stays within policy and really adheres to the needs of the corporation. So we're seeing a lot of changes in the marketplace as a result of that. The other thing is clearly multiple sources of booking vis-a-vis the advent of smartphone, web technology, of course, traditional methods. And I think the other area that we're really seeing a change in, obviously, is the fact that a lot of this is cloud-oriented. I mean, Concur has, you know, a very large travel and expense cloud, and the ability to connect within that cloud with multiple devices. And really where this ties back to the merchandising, obviously, is the ability to provide the relevant information for that particular traveler and the merchandising that's associated with that. So it's a real shift that we're seeing within the corporate marketing area.
Hey, Joff, someone would like you to repeat the percentage of millennials in the workforce that you quoted. We're still hearing you fade in and out a little bit.
I'll get even closer to my computer. This is better for everybody. So this is from, I took this, the Sources of Focusrite study, and basically what it noted was the percentage within the workforce. And it basically outlined that in 2010, about 35% of the workforce were millennials. In 2015, that's supposed to go up to 51%.
So from 35 today to, what was it in 2015?
About 51 based on this data.
51%, and that comes from Focusrite. Barbara was also asking, are these numbers based on U.S. data?
It's a good question. I don't know. I'd assume that they are, but I don't know. I do not know the answer to that.
Okay, but it is a Focusrite study, so yeah. Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Okay.
Next slide. Here you go.
Great, thanks. So I wanted to just sort of go over where we're seeing, you know, managed versus unmanaged programs going. As I mentioned to you before, you know, we see within the hotel space, not in the airline space, but in the hotel and the car space, we see a good deal of leakage within the marketplace, meaning that, you know, corporate travelers are going to multiple sources to do their bookings. I think this is probably driven for a couple of reasons. Number one, you know, less businesses are under managed programs. And, you know, of the ones that are under managed programs, they're what, you know, quote, lightly managed. So, you know, the traditional command and control, as I mentioned before, we see, you know, not necessarily being eliminated by any stretch of the imagination, but just a very different approach to corporate travel is taking place. And as a result of that, the messaging and the interaction with those travelers has changed quite a bit. And quite frankly, you know, what we get from travelers in terms of feedback is the companies that seem to get share of wallet within this space are those that make it very, very easy to do business with them. A lot of the corporate travelers don't want to, you know, necessarily, in our instance, you know, have to track paper and have to keep track of things. They want things to be automated and easy. And I'll give you a really quick example of this. Concur has a product called Concur E-Receipt. It's very simple. Traveler opts into it within Concur Travel and basically says, if I stay at these select hotel chains that do have the E-Receipt capability, when I check out, instead of giving me a paper folio that I, you know, effectively have to input the data into my expense report, I'd like it to automatically be sent straight into the expense report. And this particular product has taken off wildly within Concur because it's just easy. The customer goes into the expense report, they see their hotel stay, they see the line items. All they really have to do is verify and then send it off for an approval process. And because of this, we see a huge adoption taking place of our travelers and of the companies that we work with. We're north of 40% of travelers have adopted e-receipt, and last year, if my memory serves me correctly, we did over 3 million e-receipts. So it's just the ease and integration that we're seeing to be a key element of driving share within the market and getting that customer and making sure that customer stays with you.
Next slide. Here's your next slide.
Great, thanks. So, I mean, I don't think it's rocket science, but obviously we need to, as a community, stay connected with our customer. And we're seeing that the mix of obviously corporate within the market, and that's not entirely surprising, given the fact that, you know, as much as we hate it, we are always connected. And because of that, the ability to connect to the traveler in a variety of ways is something that we're seeing, you know, a great deal more penetration in. And I'll give you an example. We did some very top line, back of the envelope research, and we're noticing that there is a good chunk of our travelers that in various destinations will combine leisure with their business. And it kind of surprised us, truthfully, because, you know, as many of us are on the line are, you know, are avid travelers, we just want to get home and to our own beds. But what we do see is the linking of leisure to traveler in certain circumstances, and the ability to connect to that customer in terms of both products is something that we see as probably a growth area. So it's incredibly important to make sure that we're messaging and we're promoting in that regard. Next slide, please. Hotel location and loyalty programs obviously are key driving forces. I don't think there's anything surprising about that. You know, clearly choice number one is where's my meeting and how close is the property. Choice number two is, you know, the loyalty program and the offers that it provides. Just some stats to share with you in regards to the Concur group on this. Of the we see about 2.5 to 3 loyalty programs per traveler. So it's not a very high number. But what's really kind of interesting is some of the research that we've done suggests that of those travelers, if they are a member of a loyalty program, we see the average stay per traveler at 2 to 4x versus if they're not a member of that loyalty program. So it's not entirely surprising, but at the same token, if we take it back to merchandising and big data and the ability to drive the relevance, it does have a great opportunity to drive shift, lift, and retention. Next slide, please.
There you go.
Great. These are some of the key things, obviously, that are of importance to our corporate travelers. Being connected, without question, is probably the first one. And when we're connected, there's sort of 2 connection points. One, obviously, is the in-room connection, the ease of doing that. But what we're also seeing is, you know, a great deal of people, sort of that public connection in their own way. I have to give a shout out to the Starwood folks with the Share It and Link product. I think that they're a great example of how they transform the lobby environment in terms of connecting, and those are the type of merchandising things that people definitely are aspiring to. I had a friend who had a very funny quote about that. whereby he said, travelers basically don't necessarily like humans, but they like humanity, meaning that they want to be in a public environment in their own terms, and they want to be able to basically connect and do their work and have various services there. So, these things are key. It goes without saying the food and beverage element is a very big part of the merchandising that we're seeing, not to mention the health clubs. They seem to be a bit busier in certain places from what I can see, but it's not top of priority, but it's definitely in there, and of course the loyalty program. Next.
Here we go. GoToMeeting is a little slower than usual today. Here you go.
One thing that's probably worth noting is just the number of touch points that a corporate traveler will go to. A typical guest, as we see here, goes to about 24 to research a trip. And this lends really nicely into the leakage comment that I made. One of the reasons that we're seeing sort of policy leakage on car and hotel is because of just a simple human behavior element that people think that they can get a better deal elsewhere. And the ability to merchandise to these customers at these multiple touch points in a really effective and rich way will obviously continue to be quite important. So I think it's just sort of a tidbit that's worth noting. We talked a little bit about being connected. Again, this is a bit repetitive. This is an absolute key element. We're seeing it in every aspect of both, the hotel industry and to a certain extent the airline industry. Some of the things that hotels are doing that I find really interesting is, notwithstanding, having the Wi-Fi capability and whatnot, is the ability to do things like we're starting to see some room service pilots in terms of using tablets for that, check-in elements using technology. And one of the things that I saw a little while ago, which was kind of cool, was the ability to actually connect my computer to a television monitor in the hotel room and to use that functionality. So it's the multiple product sources that we're seeing that are incredibly important and continue to drive a lot of the decision mechanisms. Next slide.
Yeah, Joff, if you could continue to be closer to your mic, we're still getting input. That audio's cutting
okay.
out. Yeah. And this slide, Vishal in our audience had asked, so how does VFM and Concur work together in terms of contributing to bookings? And you may talk to this in this slide here.
Sure, absolutely. So, I mean, we're working with the likes of VFM quite a bit in terms of making sure that with the properties that are being highlighted for particular corporate accounts, that we have the rich content that allows those corporate accounts to, fundamentally have the expression of that particular property. So, we're working with the corporate accounts, we're working with the TMCs, we're working with VFM to make sure that we have this content in there for those corporate travelers. And truthfully, it's an ongoing conversation, but without question, the ability to have rich visual content that focuses obviously on public areas, focuses on rooms themselves, is key in terms of the decision mechanism. Keep in mind, corporate accounts have multiple preferred hotels for various destinations, and even from my experience in the B2C area, those that have the richest content that shows not only the public but the private amenities really have a sort of a leap up on those that don't. So hopefully that answered that individual's question. Next slide, please.
Yes, thanks, Joff. Here's your next slide.
Okay. Just a couple of things as we close out here in terms of how can you drive bookings within Concur itself. One of the things that is probably worth noting is the simple fact that Concur does not control the travel administration module within the software. That's done either by the corporation itself or it's done by the TMC on behalf of the corporation. So one thing that I would suggest to everybody who does work with our corporate accounts or the TMCs is to make sure within the Concur Travel Administration that if you have a preferred agreement, you're marked within that module as preferred. We have sort of three levels: most preferred, preferred, not preferred. And if it's not necessarily marked accordingly, it's not going to show up as favorably in the sort. So work with your TMC and your corporate account with those key points to make sure that you're sorted correctly within our travel administration module. Next slide, please.
There you go.
Great. And this is just our last slide. Just to show you that when a hotel is preferred in the booking sort, it defaults to the corporate negotiated rates. You'll notice the red line out there that basically says to that particular customer, this is a corporate negotiated rate, and fundamentally is in policy, thus you should be booking this rate. And this sort of comes back with all the other stuff that we talked about, vis-a-vis loyalty, merchandising within the tools that we have in the various tools, communicating with that traveler, driving relevant offers to really, at the end of the day, effectively ensure that the preferred agreements that you have with those corporate customers are driving the share that you're expecting to get from them. So in light of time, I'm sorry we can't speak longer, but hopefully this has been helpful, and Darlene, I'll give it back to you.
Thanks, Joff. It's been amazingly helpful, and thanks for sharing the research and your knowledge with us. I know we had some audio issues throughout your presentation, so when we produce the recording, we'll see if we can bump up the audio, and then for those of you who are having trouble hearing, perhaps you can listen to it again. So I just want to recap what Joff said. Effectively, business travelers are becoming more like leisure travelers in the way they research their hotels online. They're visiting multiple websites in the process and from all kinds of devices. So really what this means for you is that your hotel information in corporate booking tools, as well as other travel sites for that matter, needs to be accurate. It needs to stand out, as we saw in Joff's examples, and there are still a number of factors that you really can't influence on corporate self-booking tools. So you want to focus on what you can influence, like the visual story, and David Attardi is going to talk about this in just a second. So really, Concur enables you to enhance your listings with these rich visual stories through photos, videos, and virtual tours to help tell the story of your hotel and to really target that business traveler and show them how you're going to make their business trip more successful and certainly more comfortable across all the devices they're using. So thanks again, Joff. We really appreciate it. At this point, I'm going to reintroduce David Attardi. And David, if you'd like to take it from here, off to you.
Sure. Thank you. First of all, Joff, very nice job. And I just want to say that for the record, with everything you said, I absolutely concur. Sorry, I could not resist.
You couldn't, I'm sure Joff has never heard that before.
Yeah, I know. I took every ounce of willpower I had.
Never.
Not to unmute my line. No, I'm kidding. So, as Darlene mentioned, my name is David Attardi. I work with an ownership and management group in the Washington, D.C. area. We own about 20 different hotels. My role within the interactive marketing team is basically there's probably a long and very sophisticated definition for what interactive marketing really is, but for us it's an integrated approach to marketing and e-commerce and how those worlds converge. And the way I explain it to our internal team is that basically it's our team's job to ensure that guests and users and the world are finding our hotels, they're booking our hotels, and they're talking about our hotels across all channels. So a little bit about our portfolio and why this topic of corporate and business travel is very important to us is just due to kind of where we are in the space in which we play. As I mentioned, our portfolio has 20 properties, mostly business class hotels. We have 7 IHG hotels with 6 full service hotels and 1 Holiday Inn Express, and then we have 7 select service Marriott hotels, 4 Hampton Inns, 1 Best Western, and 1 Independent. So this topic is very, very important to us, and this client is where we make or break the year each year. And mostly it's just sort of due to our distribution. We're largely concentrated in the D.C. area, and we have we're in a lot of different clusters across the D.C. region, and particularly in Northern Virginia and in Montgomery County, Maryland. and there's a lot of office space in our markets, and so it's very important for us to attract the travelers that are coming in and out of those office spaces every day into our hotels. We have some clusters of hotels around the two of the major airports in here, being Dulles Airport and Reagan National Airport. So just the combination of where our properties are and the easy access that our major airports afford, it's very important. I mean, if you can, for us, you know, government is a big segment, obviously, as well. So if you sort of combine government and corporate travel by, you know, our market segmentation, we're well over 50% of both annual room nights and annual revenue. So being attractive, being on the shelf, and being and securing that business is extremely important to our properties.
Here's your next slide.
And you know, so when it comes to, I think Joff did a really nice job of kind of laying the foundation of what the landscape is, and then hopefully I'll talk a little bit about how we do things and some of the tactics. First of all, why, you know, the foundation for us of why we put so much time and energy into targeting business travelers and trying to be relevant is particularly around visual storytelling, is just because they take it very seriously. And if you know, in your own experience, if you think about the more you travel, the more accommodations are important to you. And oftentimes, at least in our markets, it's, you know, the business travelers are much more discerning, and it's much more important to them than potentially even our leisure guests. So, and a lot of the things on this list around the areas that we focus on are the same things that Joff mentioned. And so we try to highlight through content, both texts and media, photography, rich media, all these different things, things that we know are important to the business traveler, such as, you know, obviously being connected, high-speed internet access, breakfast options, the fitness center. People, you know, people are trying to not have travel interrupt their life so they can continue with the lifestyle and the wellness practices that they're used to. So fitness centers are extremely important. You know, and then lounge, cafe options. Here are just some photos of some of the different ways, different photography that we have that highlight some of these things. One area that's big for us now is workspace, particularly workspace in the guest room, and then some what we kind of call ad hoc workspace within public areas. And you know, we've it's not like we defined what's important to the business traveler. We know that these are important basically because we spend a lot of time listening to what they tell us, and a lot of these things in different forms and fashion of feedback come back to us in two primary ways. One being, you know, guest satisfaction surveys, that guests are commenting on these particular items either in good ways that they're complimenting what we've had to offer, or in negative ways where they're saying that they wish we had a better option, as well as in travel reviews and social media. So and I'll kind of dovetail into that in a little while, but those are the areas basically because we're listening to what they're saying. So it makes a lot of sense and aligns very closely with Joff's data as well. And then this slide is just a little bit of regarding the type of stuff that they consume, and this has always been a little surprising to us around, we know that photos and media are important, and this just underscores the importance of video, particularly in the business travel segment. It's not just leisure travelers that are watching videos and people planning their honeymoons and making more emotional travel purchases, but again, people that are on the road a significant amount of their time for their work. And again, you know, potentially because of the fact that those solutions are more important to them, and video can sometimes tell a little more richer story about the accommodations of the property and the overall experience, whether it's comfort, facility, convenience, and location, and so forth. So video is very important. So the next slide talks a little bit about the different types of video that we are starting to explore, and why basically is because of video and the accessibility of it, how much it's consumed, particularly through mobile devices, and how commonplace that is now. And you know, people watch videos on their smartphone without even thinking twice, whether it be on YouTube or embedded in a link or on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. So video, I think to some degree, it's getting to the point where it's not necessarily a differentiation factor, but it's almost expected. And and video means a lot of different things. For us, it used to mean a video that was sort of an all-inclusive hotel overview video, and I think the days of where that was the best solution are quickly coming to an end. And I'm certainly guilty of using those and probably getting a little more of the shelf life out of them than was appropriate. But it was something where we tried to tell the entire story in one 90-second video. I remember when I started with our company, one of the first projects I did was create videos, sort of 2-minute overview videos of all of our properties. And now I look at them and realize how terrible they were. So we are.
It seems like a 2-minute video now seems like a lifetime.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we are in the process of transitioning to really more segmented videos, really short, easily digestible, and specific videos that are targeted at particular specific audiences that we define kind of by market segment, but things that are 30 to 60 seconds, that are really talking about videos in context. So this is an example of that is videos that are geared specifically to corporate business and or government travelers that articulate, really strongly articulate our hotel's value proposition for that audience. So again, you'll notice that this list on here is the same list as it was before. So we're just trying to communicate and tell that story through video in addition to still photography. But that same thing runs true. We take the same approach to other segments. So whether it be meeting planners or brides and future brides and grooms looking for a wedding venue, we'll take the same approach with very short, specific video around whatever it is that they're looking for. And one of the things that we've come to realize, and it's a very subtle nuance, but I think really important, is it's just a change in vocabulary that we have here around talking about market segment. I mean, we use the term market segment on the hotel side, talking about different types of guests, but the guests don't really understand market segments, and nor should they. I don't know that anyone's ever called a hotel and said, "Hey, I'd like to make a reservation for a transient preferred corporate traveler." They just know that they got to go on a business trip, or nobody's going to say, "Hey, we need some Smurf rooms or a wedding block." We just know that. So what we're transitioning to is more of an occasions-based approach. So having videos for specific audiences, but based around specific occasions that might warrant the reason for their travel or for their booking.
Hey, David, Jackie in our audience has a question. She wants to know if these amenities and features are listed in order of importance to the business traveler.
That's a great question. If they are, it's by coincidence. But let me see. I would say definitely high-speed internet access. And Joff, if you're on the line still, maybe you can chime in. But I definitely think that's probably at the top. And then, for us, at least with our I'm sorry, John? Oh, so for us, for our particular hotels, I would say high-speed internet is definitely at the top, and then breakfast is probably second, and then maybe the workspace, because at least in the feedback that we've seen in the last 6 to 8 months from guest reviews, that might be number 3, and then probably the rest probably fall out in that order.
Great. Here's your next slide.
Great. So then this slide is just sort of a transition from content to context. So sort of making sure that the content of video and still photography around all of those different areas and features and amenities are not only on the shelf, but they're on the right shelf. So we work a lot trying to customize different channels so that we have custom media in the right channels. So, for example, Joff had a really great slide about working with VFM for a viewer that was within the Concur network, and so we're starting to organize our content in a similar way, and the same thing would apply to, to a CVent channel, so that there's custom stuff there that's appropriate to meeting planners, and then other different business travel agencies as well. Then, in terms of the visual storytelling, a focus that we take around telling that story is trying to tell the complete arc of the business travel's guest experience, and then highlighting those features and amenities that are important to them, but again, around the arc of the story. So, from all of the different touch points that our guests interact with us, so from an efficient check-in process where they're recognized as a loyal guest and appreciated as such, and then the in-room experience, it has to be comfortable, convenient, and contemporary. And by contemporary, I just mean I mean that either in the style or decor, or even better yet, probably in the technology. So with internet and a comfortable and nice workspace, and then the breakfast and/or coffee options and service. Whether it needs to be reliable, whether it's free or not, is might be up to the hotel, but then that needs to be told, and fresh. That the coffee, breakfast, all those things are fresh every day, and then the touch points of service. So that it's proactive, it's authentic, but then it's attentive. And I really like what Joff said around business travelers not necessarily liking humans, but liking humanity. So the service of that, how do you provide a level of humanity within your service without being sort of intrusive, is an important thing to try and capture. And then telling all of those in the context of the shopping funnel. So that's some pretty broad strokes around where we're starting to focus our video efforts in terms of visual storytelling. The next couple slides, which I'll go through pretty quickly, but are just a new type of video that we're exploring with. It's not a new type of video; it's just new to us. But this is sort of taking a page out of the book of technology and services and software industry or companies. Undoubtedly you've all seen these, but they're sometimes known as explainer videos or how-to videos. They're very short, fun, oftentimes animated videos that articulate what a company or what a product is. Maybe it's an online, a new online tool or service as a software type of offering, and the first thing on their homepage will be a click here to see, what is this product, and you click on it, and it's often animated, and it's very creative and very fun. We are beginning to explore something, things like that to tell our story, and it's not so much, that we need to explain what a hotel is or how a hotel works, but explain key persuasion that we want around a very specific topic. So that for us, it's the key persuasion, meaning at the end of this video, we want people to blank. And the next slide are a couple of examples of how we're potentially exploring this. So one is we have a restaurant concept that has just launched online ordering to better serve lunch guests in surrounding offices, so business travelers and locals that live and work in the area around our hotel that are on a time crunch for lunch. Maybe they have 45 minutes in getting to their car, getting out of the parking lot, getting to our restaurant, and getting back within 45 minutes is a tall order. So we're launching an online ordering system where they can order online ahead of time, show up, and then within 2 minutes their food will be hot, fresh, right in front of them. They can eat and literally get out of there in 20 minutes. So our tagline for it is sort of give us 2 minutes and we'll give you 20. And explaining that is one thing, and you can sort of explain to somebody, hey, this is our idea, it cuts down on lunch, but we're exploring the option of maybe having one of these explainer videos, something short, 30 to 45 seconds, that creates a character and really tells that story specifically around what the unique value proposition of this thing is. So it's not explaining the hotel, but it's explaining a very specific offering that we have. And then another one is we have some conference centers in Northern Virginia that are very specific offerings to meeting planners, and you know, the target audience is very unique and very targeted. It's not necessarily people looking for ballroom setups or social events, but so, you know, we're exploring, can we use this style of video as a different and unique way to tell the conference and the difference. And then, you know, from there we may transition into, you know, how do you explain, you know, how to choose a venue. For example, you know, it's one of our facilities is located in Dulles area of Northern Virginia, which is about 25 miles west of Washington, D.C. So, you know, can we have this type of video to explain why we think that they should hold their conference out in Dulles as opposed to downtown D.C. It's traffic, it's expenses, convenience, the airport, all these different things that could potentially be told in one of these interesting explainer video types of formats. And then the next couple slides are just how we integrate some of our media into our major web presences. The next one is our online viewer for showcasing our rich media that links from the website that you see on the screen now into the next slide, and how those are part of our main channels. And again, using something like this to talk about the specific features and amenities that are relevant to the business traveler.
And one of the things I like, David, about how you've set up this player is, and for the audience, if you notice the tabs, there's a meetings and events tab. So if I'm a meeting planner, I'm going to be drawn to that tab immediately because that's my business. And, you know, if I'm a business traveler, then I'd be interested in some of the other things. So it's a good way to actually set up. And here's another couple of examples, David, just going through your slides with the restaurants and lounges, which of course are important to the traveler as well.
Yeah, thanks. And so then, you know, mobile obviously is incredibly important in an emerging large channel. We have mobilized content for all of our major web presences, and we currently see anywhere between 15 and 27% of all of our web visits coming from mobile devices, which is pretty significant. And then we try to highlight the same media and the same content through a mobile experience. So this is just a snapshot of one of the web presence leading to some media in the different viewers on the mobile device.
And I think, David, you bring up an excellent point. You know, the credibility that people have with your hotel or your brand online is directly impacted by consistency. So so it's really important that what I'm seeing about a hotel, whether that's from my mobile, my smartphone, my tablet, or I'm sitting at my desk, across all of the channels that they're looking at you on, it's really important in that regard because it lends credibility and trust.
Indeed. And then lastly, and again I'll go through this pretty quickly, but I mentioned earlier about how we get a lot of what we understand to be important to the business traveler based on their feedback. So we spend a lot of time and energy investing in our online reputation, not only to manage it to best, to have the best reputation we can, but really to get really actionable feedback around our guests' experiences, as well as increased exposure and competitive insight about what our competitors are doing and how we can keep pace or even steal share from them with some opportunities that we can take away from what guests are saying about their hotels. So, you know, that informs what we know to be true and relevant and important to business travelers. In fact, we've rolled out a tool internally that so here's I think some media in the context of TripAdvisor reviews and within the TripAdvisor website. So we rolled out a tool internally that we use across our portfolio of hotels to try to facilitate our hotel property team's ability to get new reviews. So it's just a domain that is reviewourhotel.com, and it's we have some business cards that we've distributed to all of them and all of our hotels, and this is one way that we can get guests' feedback across whatever channel that they like. And we obviously TripAdvisor is probably the biggest player, but there are other important channels where people are would likely give feedback. So this tool brings them to reviewourhotel.com. They'll select a region, they'll select a hotel, and then you'll see we offer up multiple options for them to provide feedback, TripAdvisor or Google+, even Wedding Wire for socialist stuff. Maybe they just want to connect with us on Facebook and post on our wall, so we'll provide the links to there as well. And then this particular site was developed with the sort of responsive design so that it lends itself well to the mobile experience. And there's actually a QR code on the business card that we have been giving our guests. I think on the next slide you can see the kind of how it renders on a mobile phone. So that's just one tool that we have to facilitate online reviews, because we know that they're so important for us to get insight and feedback around business travelers' experience, and helps us dictate where we spend our time and energy and how we tell visual stories to them. So, I think,
David, there was a question that came up earlier, and this person wanted to know what is the tone of the conversation, and what does that conversation look like with a business traveler? How do you interact with them on these social sites?
That's a good question. So, for us, it's we have a firm belief that nothing is as transparent as the internet, and particularly social media. So, first and foremost, it has to be very sincere and authentic. Which probably most appropriately translates into personable. But I think it can be personable and fun, but still be professional. I mean, there's definitely a difference, I'd say, between communicating back and forth with a corporate guest or a corporate traveler than there is with your friends on Facebook. But so I'd say in terms of tone, it's sort of a fun, light professionalism. And then, I would say I'd always recommend focus on what's important to them, and sort of have a questions-based approach. We're always looking to learn, and the more questions you can ask in a way that gets them talking just increases the engagement and extends that conversation, so it has a longer shelf life, and potentially hits a broader network of people. But I think there is a balance that can be, a chord that can be struck between professionalism and the spirit of fun within that tone.
Excellent advice. Can you review just, Jackie wanted to know the mobile percentages again that you were quoting during your portion of the presentation, David?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is just for our web presences and from our own analytics, but I mean, we're seeing that anywhere between 15% and 27% of our website visits over the last 12 months have been from mobile devices.
Excellent. Thanks, David. So great insights. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences. It's always really important to our audience to hear from a hotelier who's put a lot of these theories into practice and can share their successes with us. So it's important to show your corporate guests the features and amenities that are clearly important to them, like David said, breakfast choices, fitness, internet access, and a comfortable place to work. And we know that business travelers are short on time, so if you use visuals to tell your story, they're going to get your value as soon as they see it. It's really a very succinct way to communicate what you have to offer. And as we also said, they're very connected on many social sites, trip review sites, on sites like Concur, and they're using multiple devices. They're using their laptops, smartphones, tablets, sometimes even simultaneously. So it's really key to make sure that they have a good, clear, accessible perspective of your property, which includes visuals wherever they're connecting to you. So as a road warrior, it makes their life a little easier, and it endears them to your property just a little bit more. So at this point, we are going to do the last poll and then answer a few remaining questions. And so I'm just going to launch this poll now. And this poll just is asking you about the content in this webinar. It's important for us to understand if you found the content in the webinar valuable so that we can figure out how to improve it and or keep in the stuff that you really like. So everybody's weighing in here. I think everyone has gotten the knack of answering the polls. So we're up to about 50% now of the folks who have voted. In the interim, David, here's a question about using full motion video. Do you think that you need full motion video, or should the hotelier pick and choose the type of media relative to what you're trying to achieve?
That's a great question. I probably the latter, just probably because full motion video, it's significantly less expensive, and it's easier than it used to be, but it's still pretty time consuming, and can be kind of expensive to produce the level of quality and professionalism that you might want. So there's other options, whether it be like some of those animated slideshows or whatever, but it really does depend on the context. I mean, I think for within the social space, obviously, homemade kind of amateur, so to speak, videos uploaded from your smartphone to your Facebook page or even your business Facebook page, I think are totally appropriate. If it's something that's going to be in major distribution within major booking channels, you may want to spend a little more time and resources to invest in that. But so there's other options to achieve video, or I guess sort of achieve the effects of video, but full motion video, I think you might want to pick your spots.
Excellent. Thanks, David. So the results of the poll, by and large, everyone agreed that the content was very valuable. So thank you, everyone, for sharing that with us. And again, my apologies for some of the audio issues that we had throughout today's presentation. We'll see if we can fix that during our editing process. Here's a question from Lolita, David, to you. How easy is it to get your website mobile optimized?
That's an interesting question. So there's a couple ways to do it. I mean, I guess if we're talking about maybe a standalone website outside of a brand framework, you could go one of a few different ways. One being a total rebuild if it's not already this currently, which would be built on what they kind of call a responsive design platform, which basically just means that the website identifies which type of browser and the size of the screen that it's used to view it, and then renders the design of it appropriately to best show up on that size screen. That's a pretty systemic change and would probably require an entirely new redesign or development. Another way to do it would be sort of building a separate site, so to speak, either through a subdirectory or a subdomain. So you could have, like, let's say your hotel is lolitahotel.com. You could have M for mobile, m.lolitahotel.com, or maybe lolitahotel.com/mobile, and then use some code technology that identifies if it's a mobile device and then shows the user the mobile page. So redirect to the subdomain or the subdirectory page, and that's that's probably an easier solution because you can just build something new rather, in addition to what you have, rather than totally rebuilding a site. It's a tough question. I don't know if that, and I by no stretch am the technology expert on that, but I think that that's probably a halfway decent assessment of that situation. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, agreed, David. We also at VFM have the ability, if you're a vBrochure customer, you can have the player that we saw in some of your examples mobile optimized for you. So as you said, the applications recognize that you're viewing your hotel website from a smartphone or from a tablet, and then delivers a mobile optimized version of your desktop version to your phone or your tablet in a way that's optimized. So if you'd like to contact us, I'm going to share with you our contact information in just a second. So just get a hold of us and we'd be happy to walk you through that. So just a couple of housekeeping items in summary. A lot of people have been asking for recordings of today's webinar, and you're going to receive an email shortly after today's broadcast with a recording of the webinar that you can listen to again or share with your colleagues. There's also a free guide that you can download, Corporate Travel Storytelling, and it lists a lot of the elements that David and Joff talked about today. So please come to the website and have a look at that as well. And watch for upcoming webinars. We have one coming up next month on mobile devices, so please join us there. Here's our contact information for those of you who want to get in touch with any of us. I know, Joff, a couple of people had questions that have come in. They were more functional questions on how to do certain things within Concur, and so I'm thinking they could go to your website and or contact their account manager if they have functional questions that they need answered.
Sure, and Darlene, if anybody wants, so hopefully you can hear me, feel free to contact me. It's, as you see there, my first name dot my last name at concur.com.
Great, thanks, Joff. So everybody, Joff.Romoff at concur.com if you want to contact Joff directly, and he can help you out. And we also have David Attardi's contact information there at BF Saul Hotels. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. That concludes our webinar. We're a few minutes over our allotted time, so we really appreciate everybody's participation. Thank you so much, Joff and David, for your expert insights. We really appreciate it, and judging by all of the comments that have come in, the audience really enjoyed it as well. So thank you to everyone, and we'll see you next time on the next webinar. Thanks again. Have a good rest of your week. Bye-bye.